Good morning and welcome, fellow councillors, officers and members of the public to South Kesteven District Council Planning Committee on Wednesday the 15th of December 2021. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting, so that should be fun. So the officers are presenting online and our speakers are online today. I am not aware of a fire drill taking place, so if there is a fire alarm that does go off, then please vacate the building via the stairs. The meeting place is in the front of the building. Please can everyone ensure that they have their phones turned off to silent, thank you. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded and also being live streamed via YouTube. Could you ensure that your microphones are turned off when not speaking? I am Councillor Helen Crawford, Chairman, and I'll be chairing this meeting today, and with me as my Vice Chair today is Councillor David Bellamy. In the room we have Assistant Director of Planning Emma Whitaker, Principal Planning Officers online Chris Brown and Phil Jordan, Legal Services Will Thomas, and Democratic Services Alice Atkins. Public speakers, please be aware that you have 3 minutes to speak. You'll be advised when you have 30 seconds left. You may finish your sentence, but not another paragraph. We will now go to agenda item, no we won't, we will go to, yes, apologies for absence, agenda item 1, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Penny Milnes, Councillor Mrs Judy Smith, Councillor Robert Reid, Councillor Penny Robbins, Councillor Rosemary Coby Brown and Councillor Ian Selby. Councillor Ashley Baxter will be substituting for Councillor Penny Milnes and Councillor Gloria Johnson will be substituting for Councillor Mrs Judy Smith for this meeting only. I'll now take a register of attendance. Councillor Helen Crawford.
Present.
Councillor David Bellamy.
Present.
Councillor Harish Bisnal Singh.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Phil Dilks. Councillor Charmaine Morgan. Councillor Judy Stevens.
Present.
Councillor Jackie Smith. Councillor Ashley Baxter.
Good morning.
Councillor Gloria Johnson.
Present.
Lovely, thank you very much, Alice. Item 2, does anybody have any disclosures of interests? If you think of anything during the meeting, then please make us aware. Yes, Councillor Bisnal Singh.
May I at this stage, I have got an interest, or maybe a pecuniary interest in Galliford Try. It's another development company which is I found out yesterday that it is owned by Vestry Group.
Lovely, thank you very much. Got that noted? Yeah, lovely. Thank you. And that's it, right? We'll go to minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of November. Is everybody happy with those minutes? Yes, would you like to propose, Councillor Bisnal Singh? Can we turn the microphone on then, please?
I propose, Madam Chairman, sorry, finger trouble today.
Lovely, thank you. Anybody like to second? Oh,
I'll second.
all right. Jordan.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Bellamy. Right. We will go to now the planning matters. Just to let you know and everybody be advised that item 7, application S21/0938 has been deferred for the time being. Thank you. And we have now Councillor Morgan with us. Thank you.
Agenda item 4, application S21/1907 is part heard, no public speakers. Agenda item 5, application S21/1714, also part heard, no public speakers. Agenda item 6, application S21/2117. Speaking against, Andy Bundock. Speaking for, Lisa Goodchild on behalf of Deepings School and Trust. Agenda item 7 is deferred. Agenda item 8, addendum to committee report S18/0904, no public speakers.
Lovely, thank you very much. We will go to now item 4, application S21-1907. Councillors Gloria Johnson, Charmaine Morgan and Councillor Ashley Baxter. You cannot take part in this as you were not originally here for the original meeting. So thank you. If you want to go and get a coffee, that's fine, or a mince pie. So, Chris, are you presenting this or is it Phil?
It's myself, Chairman.
Lovely. So if you'd like to start when you're ready, thank you.
Excellent. Can I please confirm that everybody in the chamber can view the presentation on the screen?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. In that case, I'll start. Good morning, Planning Committee. Thank you, Chairman. This application reference S21/1907. The proposes alterations to entrance and road, including widening of access, walls to entrance, security hut, and 1.5 metre fence to boundary. And the site is at Tallington Lakes Leisure Park. The key issues raised as part of this application are the principle of development, impact on highway safety, impact on the character of the area. This application was deferred from the previous Planning Committee on the 18th of November for a Planning Committee site visit. That site visit did take place on Monday, so Monday the 13th of December, and there was also an officer from Lincolnshire County Council Highways in attendance at that site visit as well. I'll carry on, members. However, the presentation is identical to the previous presentation given at the 18th of November Planning Committee. So this is the aerial view of the site with the site accessed north of the A1175. The area shown there in the red circle is the area of focus as part of this application for the access. And that's a more zoomed in version of the same red circle now, with the new access proposed north of the A1175, immediately to the south of that picture there on your screen. Some site photos for you. On the left is the view sort of into the site through the other side of the current security metal fencing outside of the access. And on the right hand side is the outside view of the metal fencing of the access. And the next two pictures are taken from Google Maps. This one is showing the view east on the A1175. The new access proposed is immediately there on the left hand side. There is also a secondary access that's existing, which is an access to level lakes. Fishing, which is just to the left of where that car is there on the picture. This is now a view of the, so this is the existing access which forms part of this application on the left-hand side, and then the fishing access level lakes on the right-hand side. The proposed site plan, no amendments have been made to the site plan since the previous plan committee. So the site plan includes the access shown there now on the right-hand side of your screen. With a new security hut and barrier shown towards the left-hand side of that plan. The existing boat and van park maintenance yard and boat storage yard remain to the left-hand side, to the western side of the new access proposed. These are the proposed elevations and entrance walls that are proposed as part of the new access from the A1175. In terms of evaluation, the principle of development is considered to be acceptable. There's not considered to be any adverse impact on the character of the area. County Council Highways have confirmed no objection to the proposal. It's not considered that the works of the access would result in any detrimental impact on highways. The application should be assessed on its own merits, and there's not considered to be any conflict with relevant policies in the Council's adopted local plan or the NPPF. The conditions have been updated following the previous meeting, so effectively everything that was on the additional items paper from the previous meeting has been incorporated into the current report for this one. So hence there's nothing new, there's no new additional items then for this application. The application is therefore recommended to approve, subject to conditions within the report. And I should have changed that, so the additional condition requiring details of security hut that was previously on the additional items paper for the 18th of November committee is now incorporated into the report. On that note, I'll hand back to you. Thank you, Chairman.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you for that presentation. We will now go into questions and debate. Do I have questions? Councillor Phil Dilks.
I'll ask some questions first, if I may, Madam Chairman. Thanks for the presentation, Chris. I noticed that the application is for alterations to the entrance and road, etc. I just wonder if you could tell us, that is not the entrance currently to Tallington Lakes. I know what you said, that it is going to be a secondary access. I just wonder if you could, how can it be a secondary access when it's going to have, or at least the application is for a big, big front gates with laurel hedges, which I've got to say I don't like particularly, at the entrance, when do we know that the current entrance is going to remain open? I hope it is, but since this is an alteration to the entrance, is what it says on the application, when was that entrance last used? Do we know?
Thank you, Councillor. The room, unfortunately, I can't pick up on any cues to come back in, but I'll jump in if that's okay. So in terms of the second part of your question, in terms of when the entrance was last used, unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that, I'm afraid. It is an existing access, as shown in the pictures, but unfortunately, in terms of when that access was last used, I'm unaware. Obviously, at the moment, it does have security fencing around and it's not currently being used. However, it has been used in the past. In terms of your first question then about the existing access off Barholme Road, and then this being a secondary access or a primary access, effectively the application proposes this as an access. The application proposes is the alterations to the existing access as set out in the proposal. So that's alterations to entrance and road, including widening of access, walls to entrance, security hut, 1.8 metre high fence to boundary. The application doesn't include or doesn't suggest the closing of the existing access. We have been made aware that that might be a possibility in future, and that has been raised with Lincolnshire County Council Highways. From the Highways point of view, they don't demonstrate any concerns if this was to become the main access to the site. However, there would be a required change in the existing signage. So at the moment, the signage to Tallington Lakes Leisure Park is directed towards Barholme Road. If that was to ever change in the future, the signage would need amending. So new signage proposed directly off the A1175. However, that would come forward as part of the separate highways agreement. I think that's the section 184 agreement directly with Lincolnshire County Council. That wouldn't require any planning permission from ourselves with regards to any amendments to signage. Thank you.
Yep, thank you for that, Chris. If I can just be helpful, I've lived in the area approximately 40 years and I've never known that entrance to be used, I've got to say. So I accept that the curbs are there, or that it is an old entrance that is being resurrected, if I can call it that. I welcome the fact that there is. I was very concerned that if you had 3 caravans waiting to turn right across the traffic, that would could cause a real problem. But I do welcome the fact that they're going to have a barrier much further in. I do welcome that. However, if I can just say, I really welcome the fact that the highways engineer actually came to our site visit. I'm not sure how many years I've been on the planning committee, but I believe that's the first time a highways representative has actually come to our site visit, and he explained how, in his view, it met all the criteria for safety and all the rest of it. So whilst I can understand that there are no material grounds for refusing it, I do remain of the view that it is it's not the best way of having an entrance into Tallington Lakes, and I think it is dangerous, frankly, particularly given the proximity of the mainline railway. And when we visited, I'm sure colleagues will confirm, we were held up coming from the Stamford end for about 10 minutes and two occasions of the gates coming down. So you just think you're about to go over and the gates come down again. And what that does is it creates people sort of anticipate, once the gates come up and you go, it's like the start of a Formula One race. People they've been delayed 10 minutes and they really want to make progress. So, you know, they off they go quite fast. And then coming the other way from the Deepings, when you get to just before where this proposed entrance is, you can see whether or not the barrier is down or up. And if it is up, I've done it myself, you will think, oh, you know, if I put my foot down here, I'll probably get over there before it comes down again, because it does come down very frequently and is notorious, you know, a notorious crossing. So I have got serious reservations about it. From what I've heard, I understand that there are no material grounds to prevent this application going through, but I won't be voting for it. Thank you, in all consciousness, on grounds of safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Lady Chairman. I do understand the issues. I know particularly on my patch as well, on the Eye Dyke, where there's standing traffic turning right. Very often the signage to the left with the directions has been flattened because somebody's come up at speed behind, then swerved at the last minute and took the signs out. I know there's another one, particularly Dalligate at Great Ponton, and also not on my patch, but near Grantham on the Eye Dyke. Harrowby Lane, they're turning down to Harrowby Lane. There's there's visibility from both directions for about a mile there, but the signs still keep getting flattened because people come up too fast behind a stationary vehicle. Having said that, unfortunately, the way the system seems to work, especially with something like that, although it's an existing access, it is a new in a way. Unless there's a build-up of casualties, like I say, there's no sort of evidence to sort of say that it shouldn't go ahead. I know that's reactive, but that's the way the system seems to work, unfortunately. So I don't mind proposing.
Thank you, Councillor Bellamy. Emma, you wanted to come in?
Thank you. If I can just clarify a couple of points for members. So it's an existing access. I'm just looking at some historical photos. I can't give you a date for when it was last used, but I can see that it's been there for a significant number of years. It doesn't require planning permission to reopen as an access. What requires permission are the additional works to widen it, the improvements, the boundary treatments, those sorts of things. So we can't stop this from being reopened tomorrow as a form of access into the site. The safety data is important. County looked at that. We heard from the highways officer on Monday at the site visit. Unfortunately, you know, we did get stuck behind two trains, I think, for nearly 10 minutes. I can understand that's frustrating, but unfortunately people do need to adhere to the highway code and to the speed limits on the road, and they should be driving sensibly. And we've obviously got to assess the application based on its own sort of merits. What we did see out on the site is actually it's good sight lines in both directions, and that's what's important in terms of the visibility going in and out of the site. So I hope that's just sort of tidied up and clarified a couple of points for you.
Thank you, Emma. Councillor Judy Stevens.
Yeah, I have to, you know, I understand. And I do want to say thank you to Lincolnshire Highways for turning up on, was it Monday? Seems like a million years ago. But anyway, they turned up and it was great because they never do normally. It was a shame they didn't over that, what's it called? That place in Grantham that I'll never forget. But anyway, it's good that they came this time. I understand where we are with I think it's very dangerous. I don't think I can in consciousness vote for it either. I do understand the problems around that. But what I wanted to mention was the boundary treatment, which is going to replace natural hedgerow with laurel bushes, you know, which flies in the face of everything we know about biodiversity and about what we've signed up for in this council to do with, you know, trying to limit our impact on the planet. And as I've said in this committee before, and I'll say it again, there is no point in us listening to endless hours of David Attenborough if we then don't try at least to make improvements where we can. So replacing a natural hedge, which has presumably been there for many years, with a laurel bush, which is very dense, and so bushes, I should say, which is dense and will much more likely impair vision at this point, I think is a bit of a travesty. So I would like to see if we could condition having the natural hedgerow, perhaps, enhanced if that's, if it is necessary, rather than a laurel hedge be planted there, please. Thank you.
So, and we did touch this out on site, and it is, laurel's obviously not what you would ordinarily expect to see in that particular location. As far as I understand, the hedge itself is not protected, so we couldn't actually prevent its removal tomorrow, and we couldn't prevent its replacement with something else, such as laurel. What we could do is we could look to put a landscaping condition on, or a boundary treatment condition on, so we can perhaps try and secure something perhaps a bit better than laurel in the first instance. That only affords us protection, I should add, for about 5 years, and at that point we can't secure it longer term, but perhaps we can do something in the first instance. So I'd be happy to add a condition if members were minded to accept that.
My mic was on, is now. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Do I have any other speakers? Yeah, Councillor Bishnessy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I'm very sorry that I missed the site visit. However, some of my questions has been answered. My main concern is that this entrance will become the main entrance to the site gradually. Are there any conditions we can put in there that this doesn't become so? Only an auxiliary entrance. And also, I would like Chris, if she could compare the previous application entrance and how much this current one differs from it. If you could put that on the screen for us, please.
I'll let Chris pull up the plans in terms of the plans, but in terms of last month's committee, there's no change to the proposal. So are you asking for details of the existing access versus the proposed? Yeah, okay, that's fine. I'll let Chris pull something up there. In terms of your first point, it's not intended to be a secondary, to be a primary access. But I'm aware that there is concern that would be the case. So we have actually asked colleagues at county if they would be concerned that this would be a primary access in the future. And they've confirmed that there's no highway safety issues or any other objections that they would raise if that was the other access was closed off, other than they would require additional signage, but they've got separate legislation that they would require that to be carried out under, and that was confirmed in the presentation as well. So it's not something that we can reasonably control, because in highway safety terms, there is no issue with either access being the sole primary access.
Have you got your screen up, Chris, yet?
Thank you, Chairman. I am just waiting on the files to sort of reload up, so I'll start sharing my screen as soon as I can.
In that case, we'll go to Councillor Phil Dilks. I think you wanted to.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to come back, Madam Chairman. Just really to pick up on the point Emma sort of made. Yeah, I think actually the gates came down twice, but I think there were 3 trains. Not that it particularly matters, but we were rather lucky on that occasion. Because you can be stopped at Tallington Crossing far longer than we were, and it's not unusual to be stopped far longer than we were. And I think the record is that I've been stopped is for 7 trains just in one crossing. So, it just emphasises that once the gates come hot, people actually make a rush for it. On the point about there's no issue, there isn't an issue from the highways perspective and from the official sort of, it meets all the criteria, etc. But I have to say, I know from experience that if you have got a caravan or if you've got a residence on Tallington Lakes, many of the residents are terrified that this is going to become the main exit and entrance. And I've had 2 residents have called me, one of which is quite a good friend, and he said he was absolutely terrified at the prospect of having to emerge, drive his car. He was quite elderly, I have to say, but driving his car out or in, he wouldn't turn right into the new entrance, but he was concerned about emerging, coming out onto the main road. So, there are issues as perceived by local people, and that's why I won't be voting for it. Won't be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Chris has got the plans up for you now, Councillor Businessing.
Chris, thank you very much. What was the previous, is there much departure from the previous applications, the actual layout of the gates and the road layout in particular?
Sorry, Harish, this is exactly the same plan that we had last month. The only reason why we deferred it was so we could come back and go and have a site visit. So the actual plans have not changed from then, from the last planning meeting. So they're the same.
I thought, Madam Chairman, that probably there might be the road, in the fact that the highways officers were there, which was very pleasing to hear that they might have suggested in terms of having a ghost filtering lane.
No, nothing was suggested. The plan is as it was last month. We just deferred it so we could all have a site visit. Right, any other speakers? We've had a proposer. I am willing to second that proposal because I cannot see, unfortunately, a good reason that if we refused it and it went to appeal, that we would win. So I will second that motion. Thank you, Councillor Judy Stevens.
Well, with that condition within the proposal.
Are you happy with that condition?
That Emma suggested? Yeah. Are we all good?
Yes, I'll be very pleased to. It's a very good point from Councillor Stevens. I'm quite happy for the amendment. Thank you.
Just to clarify for members, that would be an additional condition to require a scheme for boundary treatment, so we can look at the hedging and the details there.
So on that basis, even though I do take Councillor Dilks's points, I will then vote for it. But in my conscience, I do understand that it's only because we would fail at appeal.
Yeah. Right, so we've had a proposer, a seconder. I think we've all done in debate. So we'll go to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. That's 3. Against? Abstentions? 2. That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Right, thank you very much. We will go now to agenda item 5, S21 1714. Chris, are you presenting this one as well?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is me again.
If you'd like to start when you're ready, then please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is S21/1714. The proposal is for the erection of a 2-storey rear extension at the Conifers, School Lane, Old Somerby. The key issues raised as part of this application are the impact on residential amenity and the impact upon the character and appearance of the area. Again, this application was deferred from the previous committee of the 18th of November for a planning committee site visit. With this one, there are amended plans that have been received, which I will come to as part of the presentation. So just to refresh plan committee, the site is located to the north of School Lane, to the west side of Old Somerby. Shown there on the zoomed in aerial image is the central of a row of 3 bungalows to the north of School Lane. The street scene itself is mixed with 2-storey dwellings either side of those 3 bungalows. However, the site sits as a central plot of a bungalow between 2 others. and that's the red line of the application site. So these photos were presented at the last plan committee. I'll run through these very quickly, and I have got some further photos as well. So that's the front elevation of the dwelling. The front elevation, again, this now shows neighbouring Shamrock and the attached garage to the side of the existing dwelling. This is a view out to the rear garden of the dwelling. That's looking north. So this is now from the rear garden looking towards Sarsara over to the, it's looking to the right, but that's to the western side. And that's the same view again. So again, that's looking to the rear of Sarsara. This is now looking the other way. So that's this is looking to the existing shed and garage of the host dwelling, the conifers. Then with neighbouring Shamrock there, you can see the roof line beyond the garage. These are the existing plans. And so this was the plans that were submitted as part and considered as part of the previous time it came to planning committee on the 18th of November. The amendments shown, I'll flip between the two screens, but effectively the dimensions of the proposed extension haven't changed. So it's still a sitting room downstairs and a bedroom upstairs, together with ensuite bathroom. However, the amended plans I'll come on to remove the previously proposed walkout balcony. So these are the previous proposed plans that show that balcony. If you can see my mouse shown up on here on the top right-hand side, and also you can see the inset balcony here on the bottom right-hand corner of the slide. If I move on to the next screen, so again, now the dimensions of the proposed extension haven't changed. They're still the same as considered at the last planning committee. However, that balcony has been removed. So if I flick back one, you can see the inset balcony here. That's now been removed. So that balcony has been replaced by effectively a patio door or large window with then a balustrade to the front of that. So a Juliet balcony now. So there won't be any access beyond the bedroom as there was previously shown with the balcony. So moving on from the amended plans, we've received some further photos from the neighbours. So these photos were sent in by the ward member, Councillor Trotter, and show again, so this is now from the garden of Sarsara looking towards the conifers. This is now the opposite side of Sarsara to the neighbouring Meadowbank. This now is from the garden of Shamrock. So Shamrock is on the left-hand side, looking towards the conifers or the garage of the conifers with the satellite dish on there to the right-hand side. Again, now this is the view of the conifers. This is the garage of the conifers from Shamrock. The proposed extension doesn't extend over the garage. It follows the line of the existing ridge. It doesn't extend beyond the footprint of the main dwelling towards the garage. And again, another photo showing the conifers side elevation from Shamrock. For evaluation of this application, the relevant local plan policy considered is DE1. There is a neighbourhood plan for Old Summerby, but that's relatively silent with regards to householder extensions. The key issues are considered to be the impact on the character and appearance of the area, impact on the street scene, and impact on neighbouring amenity. Objections have been received from both neighbours and the further dwelling as well. In terms of impact on the street scene, the proposal will be visible in the street scene. So the extension was previously reduced in height. So that was reduced by 300 mil. That was prior to the last committee. That's not a change since the last committee. So it's now 900 mil above the existing ridge line with matching render to the front elevation. The extension is located to the rear of the dwelling, and as I've pointed out earlier, is in what's currently a mixed street scene along School Lane. In terms of impact on residential amenity, in terms of overlooking impact, so there will be an overlooking impact from the window at first floor height. However, the previous balcony proposal has now been removed by the applicants. That wasn't requested by the council, that was put forward to us by the applicant. That overlooking impact is considered to be similar in terms of an impact from any first floor window. And that focuses on neighbouring rear gardens. We don't consider that to impact on neighbouring rear patio areas or the rear elevations of neighbouring dwellings. In terms of any overbearing impact, that dwelling is set forward from Sarsara and away from the boundary and set in from Shamrock on the other side with the garage. So in terms of conclusion, it will have an impact on the street scene and on neighbouring amenity. However, on balance, the proposal is not considered to be harmful. I should have pointed out earlier that the site was subject to a committee site visit again that took place on Monday. And on that, I'll hand back to you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Chris. Do I have any councillors? Councillor Phil Dilks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I welcome the site visit that we had. I think it was right that we went and had a site visit. We were criticised at the original hearing by the residents because we were being asked to make a determination without a site visit, and they thought that was a bit not right. I tend to agree with them, I've got to say. And being a bit of a fan of site visits, I think you can see a lot on the ground that we don't see from from pictures on a screen, sort of thing. So I really welcome it, and I thank the neighbours for actually inviting us to have a look from the next door property. The street, as Chris has said, is mixed, two-storey and bungalows, and there is a line of two-storey houses with 3 bungalows in the middle. Obviously, the part of the objection was the full walkout balcony, which was actually recommended for approval, I believe, at the time. But despite that, the neighbours have, so the applicants have changed and downgraded it and given up their full walkout balcony that they wanted, and they've got this Juliet balcony. And in looking at the site visit, I can see absolutely no no material grounds anyway to object to this, and so I would be very happy to actually propose approval.
Thank you, Councillor Dilks. Councillor Judy Stevens.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else wish to speak in the debate? No, then we'll go to the vote then, please. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That's 5, that's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. We'll go now to agenda item 6, which is S21-2117. We're just waiting for some members to come back into the room for this. But Phil, if you could get this loaded. Is it Phil that's taken this one? Anybody?
It is Phil. Yes, I can confirm. Chairman, it is Phil with this one.
Sorting my camera and microphone out.
Right, lovely. So give us a couple of ticks, and when you're ready, or when we're ready in here, I'll let you know. Thank you. Whilst you're here, Councillor Morgan, as you missed the first part, do you have any declarations of interest? Lovely, thank you very much.
Good morning, members. And
can you just hang on a moment? We're waiting for Councillor Baxter to come back into the room. Thank you. Lovely. Thank you very much, Phil. You can start.
thank you, Madam Chairman, and good morning, members. Can you just confirm you can see the presentation okay and you can hear?
Yep.
Okay.
We can see that. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next application is reference S21-2117. It's for the erection of a temporary building for a period of 2 years to be used as an area for PE curriculum and exams. The application site is at the Deeping School in Deeping St James, and I'm Phil Jordan, Principal Planning Officer. The key issues for this application are the principle of development, the impact on the character of the area, and impacts on surrounding residential amenity. First slide there just shows broadly where the site is. You can see on the screen there an aerial image of Market Deeping and Deeping St James, and located somewhere out to the east of Deeping St James, you have the school, which is on a shared site with Deeping Leisure Centre. So this just shows the school and leisure centre site in a bit more detail. You can see you've got Spalding Road to the north of the site there, and then some further residential properties to the south of the site as well. This is a photo of the site looking north, so looking up towards Spalding Road. And you can see just on the left there, that's a recently constructed permanent building, which I believe is used for design technology. So this plan here just shows the location of where the structure would go. You can see the red outline of the recently constructed building adjacent to it, and then the area marked in blue is where this temporary structure would be placed. You can see on the plan some of the separation distances, so it's approximately 19 metres to the boundary of the properties to the south, and just over 17 metres to the boundary of the properties to the north. The separation between the actual built form is about 27.5 metres going north, and just over 47 metres to these properties to the south. The building itself is fairly simple and basic. Really, it's a functional temporary structure. Just in terms of some of the sort of scale of it, you can see the eaves height is just over 6 metres, and then the overall sort of pitch of the roof is just over 9 metres. So these plans here, these are sort of extracted some of the guidance from the recently adopted design supplementary, South Stephen supplementary design guidance. Within that guidance, there's some recommendations on separation between buildings in terms of respecting amenity from residential properties. And what it does is it uses this 25-degree rule from habitable windows to where the proposed built form is. And you can see that applying that guidance, the separation distance passes that 25-degree rule comfortably, both to the properties to the south on Millfield Road and those properties to the north on Spalding Road. So just a brief evaluation. The permission is sought for a temporary building. That's for a 2-year period, and it would be used for ongoing education purposes and sports provision within that existing school site. The proposal is on existing sports courts, and so we're required to consult with Sport England, who haven't objected to the proposal. The building, whilst simple in appearance, it is considered to be appropriate for the existing education and leisure context. I've already talked through those separation distances, which meet the rules set out in that adopted design SPD. There's no proposed increase in pupil numbers in the site as a whole or the scale of the operation. Really, this just sort of provides some indoor space, which has arisen through the closure of the Deepings Leisure Centre, that provides or would provide the school with some space for exams and indoor physical education classes. In summary, the proposal is considered to be in accordance with the local plan and the policies in the Deepings neighbourhood plan, and therefore the recommendation is to grant permission subject to conditions which include securing the temporary nature of the building and reinstatement of the land to its current use after 2 years. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Phil, for that presentation. And now we have a public speaker, Mr. Andy Bundock, please. Thank you.
Hello there. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak at the meeting today. Now, if you just permit me to share my screen.
I don't think we've seen your, we need to see what you're going to put up on screen before you put it up on screen. So you've got 3 minutes to speak then, please. Thank you.
Okay, so can everyone see what's on my screen?
Sorry, I just need to check something procedurally. Any presentation material needs to have been supplied to us before the committee so we could review its contents and also make the applicant aware of anything contained within it. So I'm just clarifying, I don't believe we've seen this, so I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your screen, but you're still permitted to have your 3 minutes.
Okay, well,
Madam Chairman, on point of order, I just wonder if it would be helpful to have a short adjournment of the meeting to allow Emma to have a look, if that, you know, if we need to. Would that be helpful? I mean, I'm assuming that, I don't know if we can get an assurance that all we're going to see is views from this gentleman's garden.
I don't know the contents of the presentation. It's not been shared with us. In the interest of fairness, we also have to let the applicant have sight of the presentation as well. We also need to make sure that it's fairly representative of the situation and not misportraying something. We've also got clear rules that ask for presentation material to be made available to us ahead of the planning committee, and there was a date in the letter that was sent out. Unfortunately, that's not been followed.
Madam Chair, I'm just wondering if we could ask if it would be helpful again if Mrs. Goodchild would be able to have a quick look or even give approval if that would be helpful. I understand what's being said. I'm just trying to get a way through this that's fair.
Well, the fair way was for the presenter to do as he was asked and give us that information beforehand of the meeting. It is too late now, I'm afraid. We'll have the 3 minutes speak. Thank you. If you'd like to start when you're ready, please, Mr. Bundock. Thank you.
Okay. I will go through my presentation without sharing it then, although the visual aspects of it will be completely lost. I apologise for not following the procedure. I worked on this till very, very late last night after having my COVID jab. So please excuse me. I'm representing families from Spalding Road 8, 10 and 12 and 56 Millfield Road. We'll be touching on visual amenity, loss of light, imposing the imposing structure of the building, the duration of the building being up for 2 years, noise and disturbance resulting from use. As you probably are aware, the building has already started to take place, and it's without no shadow of doubt, I have an Amazon warehouse at the bottom of my garden. It's much bigger than we anticipated. I would be sharing pictures with you right now, but that's clearly not going to be the case. The description of as far as the duration is concerned, the description of the proposal says that the building will be up for a maximum of 2 years. And then no later than 2 years, and it will be taken down after that period of time. And it also goes on to say within the impact of use and the character of the area. However, given the application proposes only a temporary permission and the building will be temporary in nature, it's necessary to impose a condition that would limit the building to be in place for a 2-year period. I think I've established it will be up for 2 years. Looking at a document that I've seen on the deepenings discussion, Save Deepenings discussion Facebook page, it seems that the construction of the commencement of the construction of the refurbishments of leisure centre won't take place until January 2023. This means that the 2-year period it's up means that it will be ending before the actual completion of the option A, B plus, or option C of the actual refurbishment, which means that it could be the refurbishment might not even be finished for 3+ years. This is all based on the fact that the leisure centre will be in its current location next to the school. If it moves, then what? The school will have no access to permanent facilities and will need to create their own. The school will then need a permanent building. So my question here is, what happens after the 2-year period? When I asked this question at the Deeping Parish Council meeting, the answer I was given was that the school will just reapply. Well, then that, for me, just makes the whole 2-year period kind of ridiculous, really, because if you just keep reapplying, then 2 years means nothing.
30 seconds.
There's a precedent here with the Stand Ground Academy. This initially was a 2-year project. It's now been up for 10 years. Last point is, as I've been told by Councillor Dilks, that the proposed usage will be from 6:30 a.m. till 9 p.m. My children are in bed by 8 p.m. We can hear every ball bounce and every excited instruction, and we are concerned by the usage at this period of time of night. I'm hoping that the planning does not include
3 minutes.
An income generator for the school. I've run out of time. Apologies.
Yep. Thank you very much, Mr. Bundock. And now we have Lisa Goodchild on behalf of Deeping School Trust, if you'd like to.
Madam Chairman, those questions normally sort of go through you, so it would be normal for Councillor Baxter to put his question and for you to then say that's okay or not.
Yeah, that's at my discretion. Thank you. He's not professional, it's in his opinion. And I think we'll just go to the next public speaker. Thank you.
I don't think that's the usual procedure of this committee. I think usually it's possible to at least frame the question before you decide that you don't want to hear it.
Right, frame your question then, please.
Currently, through you, Chair, Mr. Bundock is living near an area which is a play area and is proposed to go from an outdoor play area to an indoor play area. I'd like to ask a question around the current noise from that play area and why it would be different with it being indoor rather than outdoor. Because indoor, perhaps you would think that you would hear less rather than more.
Thank you. Mr. Bundock, if you'd like to answer that question, please.
I guess it's just a question of if the indoor was a brick built building, yes, of course you'd have some soundproofing. The temporary building would not offer us as much soundproofing. And going by how much sound we can hear due to its location, then every ball bounce, every excited screaming of a teacher to the shouting instructions. My concern isn't so much that during school hours. I like the life around me during school hours, but when my kids are in bed, I don't want the risk of them being kept awake at night because the school have used the building out of school hours, and it's the 9 p.m. element of it that is of concern.
Thank you. If you'd like to start when you're ready, please, Lisa Goodchild. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. The closure of the Deeping Leisure Centre in July 2021 due to health and safety reasons left the Deeping School without access to a sports hall facility. The hall has been an integral part of a shared usage agreement between the school and SKDC since the 1970s. It is used for the delivery of PE lessons, after-school sports clubs, public examinations in the summer, mock examinations year-round, and also for one-off school events that require a sizable indoor space. With uncertain timescales to resolving the issues at the leisure centre, we have had to find an urgent solution to ensure continuity of provision for our students. In consultation with our trust, we are seeking permission to install a temporary sports hall on our site. The lack of a sports hall has had a detrimental impact on the school. Teaching and learning in PE lessons has suffered, and as we go into the winter months, it is imperative that our 1,344 students have an indoor venue for PE lessons. Students taking GCSE and BTEC sports qualifications next summer will be at a severe disadvantage if a sports hall is not in place. Furthermore, 344 of our students will sit their GCSE, BTEC and A-level public exams in the summer of 22. There is no alternative venue on the school site that meets the statutory national requirements for public exams as set out by the Joint Council for Qualifications. It is crucial that all students prepare for public exams by taking mock exams each year. These exams offer a vital opportunity to experience sitting in an exam in the correct conditions. So having access to the right kind of venue is absolutely crucial. While we are still experiencing the ongoing impact of the pandemic and the uncertainty that brings, it is doubly important that students can sit their mock exams in optimum conditions. Young people have been adversely impacted in many ways during the pandemic. One of the key effects we have seen over the past 21 months has been on practical subjects such as PE, which in turn has had an impact on young people's health and well-being. It is imperative that as a school we do as much as possible to provide the facilities students need to take part in this kind of activity. We've taken expert advice regarding the temporary sports hall and have secured funding for it from our trust, Anthem Schools Trust. The proposed location of the temporary hall is within the school fence line, maintaining our safeguarding and security obligations.
Sorry, you have 30 seconds left.
Position also allows unencumbered access to our newly refurbished playing courts and is in close proximity to our new technology building. This will allow easy connectivity to electrical, IT and telecom services without the need to create a new infrastructure on site. Whilst the need for a hall is urgent, the building is not a permanent structure. It is a short-term solution which will ensure that the immediate needs of the school can be met. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My question, can you just confirm the hours of use, please?
So the hours of use will depend on what's going on in school that day. So for example, if we have an examination on, the hall will, seating will be put in the hall from around 7 o'clock in the morning. It will be taken down probably by around 5 o'clock. So that's the typical use. If there's not an exam in place, after school activity, the clubs that we run after school typically finish by 4:15. It would be really exceptional for any use to go on longer than say 5 o'clock for a sporting activity. So those are the typical uses we're looking at. It would just be something like an open evening, which does run until 9 p.m, that would facilitate the use of the hall.
Lovely, thank you very much. Councillor Bijnow Singh, please, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you for your presentations. Very good. Will it be possible for you to tell us, because you have applied for this building for 2 years, do you think with hindsight, you will need more time for it, because you're obviously relying onto the Deeping Leisure Centre coming online in 2 years' time, but construction as it is, it may take longer. So I just wondered if you could consider probably the timescale is right.
So as it stands at the moment, we don't have a timescale from SKDC regarding the refurbishment of the leisure centre. I believe that there's been a meeting this week, or a series of meetings by SKDC, and the school and trust are expecting an update on Friday from SKDC. The school and trust do want students to be back in a permanent building, not in a temporary building, as quickly as possible.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on something that the other speaker said as well, just to clarify what happens with these types of applications. So what's been applied for is a temporary permission for 2 years. There is a condition that's recommended that once that 2-year period is up, then the structure would need to be taken down and the land reverted to its former use and condition. If there is a situation where the school needed it for longer, they'd have to reapply for planning permission, and we would have to consider whether that was appropriate at the time. It is unusual to have temporary permission after temporary permission after temporary permission, because then one asks the question, why is it not a permanent permission? But I think it's quite clear from everything I've seen that the school certainly doesn't want this here any longer than is necessary. But what you've got to decide today, members, is whether or not it's acceptable for a temporary 2-year permission. That's the only thing we can think about today, not what could happen next. Thank you.
Councillor Businessing.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Through the chair, will it be possible for you to clarify then the 2 years times clock? Does it start ticking from if the application is approved today? Does it start now, or does it start from the completion of the building?
It would be 2 years from the date of the decision, which would be, well, but we'd have to physically get the decision notice out, so it could be tomorrow, but it would be 2 years from the date of the decision. Clearly the structure is part built. The school ceased work, from what I understand, on it, because they realised they'd gone beyond what they should have done without the benefit of the planning permission. But yes, they've already made a material start in terms of the works.
Okay. Did anybody have questions? Right, okay, for the public speaker, yes, right, okay. It was Judy Stevenson next.
Thanks very much. Could you just clarify whether or not there's any intention to use this building for commercial purposes over and above the school use? Thank you.
Yeah, I can clarify there have been no discussions whatsoever with the school or trust for using this building for any commercial use. None have been had whatsoever. The school facilities are occasionally used for community group use on an ad hoc basis, such as the parish council, but again, there has been no discussion on that.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. My main concern. Okay. My main concern is, as you just said, it's 2 years and you can apply and apply. I've had first-hand experience of temporary buildings, and they had temporary buildings for 18 months and the land stayed there for 10 years. Are you intending to go into the Deepings Leisure Centre after, when it's built, for your sports facilities and everything like that? And what would you do if your temporary building went up? Because as you just said, it can go up, your planning starts from now, from whenever they grant the permission. And if it's not ready, what are you going to do if they say you can't have an extension? Thank you.
Okay, so yes, as it stands at the moment.
Sorry, that's not a relevant question. We're just going on the temporary 2 year. After that, they'll have to come back. Thank you. Sorry, Charmaine Morgan, thank you.
Thank you. Can you clarify how high the school fence is along the border of the properties where concerns have been raised, please? And once the building is up, I understand that from reading the report that there have been some issues with the children and noise, etc., and behaviour. Once the building's actually up, there won't be a huge amount of space in comparison to what they've got now. So what are your plans to manage the pupils' access to the rear of that building and potential supervision issues?
I'm afraid I don't have with me the detail of how high the fence line is. I can provide that to the committee at a later time. In terms of managing access, noise and behaviour, during lesson time, students will always be under the supervision of their teachers. So any students accessing the sports hall for PE lessons will be under the supervision of PE teachers. In examination times, again, there will be school staff present at all times. During breaks and lunch times, the school has duty staff on all playgrounds and in all areas. So again, that will be the supervision that's there from adults.
Are you saying that you would allow the pupils to go behind that? I have to say, I used to be a lunchtime supervisor at school once upon a time. Are you saying you would allow the pupils to go behind that building, which clearly would be an obstruction to line of sight staff or supervisors? Had you considered somehow blocking that rear area off?
So the area between the current technology building and the proposed building will be blocked off.
Can I just stop you there? I don't think that is relevant at the minute to this application. Emma, would you like to?
I mean, if members are still interested in the answer, then I suppose we could hear the answer, but it's not overly relevant. What you're interested in is how the school is going to manage the other play spaces. What we've got to look at today is whether or not this temporary structure is acceptable in its proposed location and its relationship with the neighbours and everything else. So if members really want to hear the answer in terms of the management, then I guess we could hear it, but you need to be careful what we're basing the decision on.
I'm looking at the application before us, and I'm specifically considering ways of mitigating against a concern that may be voted against, to be honest. So I don't want to, because I think it's really important we get this. But my concern is you picked on it, the relationship between the site and the neighbours, which will change potentially once this building goes up. Because whilst it creates a barrier, it could be a positive thing actually, it could also become a very negative one if that's not managed in that rear section where the neighbours are. And I unfortunately speak from personal experience because my mother was in this situation herself not so long ago.
Thank you. If you'd like to carry on.
I can assure the committee that the supervisory staff will always take into account lines of sight. And always will look at areas and will position themselves accordingly and will move around their designated area during the break or lunchtime to ensure that all areas are under good supervision. So I can assure the committee that those considerations, are always taken into account to ensure that children are supervised at all times.
Thank you, Councillor Bellamy.
Yeah, just to clarify something you said on a previous answer. Can you confirm that there won't be any sports activities taking place after you've said that there might be, I can't remember what it was now, but it sounded like a seated event or something like that going on after the school's closed in the evenings. Are you saying that there won't be any sports activities which are likely to be noisier after that time?
No, I wouldn't envisage that there would be any sports activities after the normal clubs take place, finish taking place each day. So that's typically sort of 4:15, 4:30. If there's a fixture on with another school, that may take until 5 o'clock to allow schools, from around the area, transport children to the school. But no, we wouldn't be envisaging any sort of regular evening use of any sporting activity in the hall. It's, this is school use for PE lessons and after school clubs.
Thank you, Councillor Dilks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Lisa, for your presentation. I just wondered if you would say a little bit more, if you would, please, to address the concerns by the local residents who were, I understand, a bit perplexed as to why exactly the location that you picked is that one. And can you just sort of tell us why it couldn't go in the area that they suggested, that I think was where a building was recently demolished?
No, of course, I'm happy to explain that. So the proposed location enables us to put in place IT, electrical and telecoms hookups from our new technology building really easily with cables above ground rather than having to dig trenches. So for us, there's both a speed and a cost consideration there. It will be cheaper and we'll be able to do it more quickly. The area that the old design and technology block was built in, which is now a grassed area, would have a number of difficulties if that was the location of the temporary hall. We would have to dig trenches for power and electric and telecoms. So we'd have to create a whole new infrastructure to give light and power and heating to the building. It would also, we'd have to put in additional paths to get across the grass area. With it being in proximity to grass, in the winter months, there would be more, slip and trip hazards. We'd have potentially grass and mud walked into the new building that again would cause a safety risk, a cleaning burden on the school. So for all of those reasons, we felt it was better to be on hard standing in proximity to existing electrical, IT, telecom services. Furthermore, the new design and tech building involved the full refurbishment of our tennis and netball courts. If the building was to go anywhere else, access to those could be encumbered. So the current location really was felt by the school and the experts that we consulted to be the best possible location for reasons of cost, speed, safety, etc.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Harish, and then Ashley, and then that will be the end of questions for our speaker. Harish.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think my question has been answered. Thank you.
Lovely. Councillor Baxter.
I wanted to ask about the heating of the facility and the storage. If you're using it for exams, then that's a lot of desks. Will they be stored within the building? Or if not, then isn't that potentially a lot of noise at 6:30, 7:30 in the morning? So heating and noise, and I don't know if it should be saved for the debate, but this 2 years thing, I think is unrealistic. And I think to say today that it's only going to be 2 years, when we've all been at a meeting yesterday that said it's going to be 3 years or more, we need to think about that.
So in terms of heating, it will be electric heating in the hall, and that is needed to ensure that it's for the exams really, that that it's at a reasonable temperature so that young people can do their best in their examinations. We wouldn't want it to be obviously cold in there during exams. In terms of storage of desks and chairs and tables, those will be into adjacent containers, which will also be temporary. We had to take the tables and chairs out of the leisure centre when the leisure centre was closed for health and safety reasons. For obvious reasons, our caretaking staff couldn't be in the existing leisure centre. So they've already been decanted to storage containers. I think when exams take place, the intention will be to set up for the exam and then leave the exam set up for the following couple of weeks. So it shouldn't be a daily, sort of set up and breakdown. So that should help minimise noise and disruption at both morning and afternoon.
Thank you. And if you'd like to take a seat now. I'm sorry, there is a time limit on asking questions for speakers. You've asked a question. We're going to go into questions for officers and debate now, please. Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
I think a point's just been made, which I can't see on the plan, and that's the containers. Are they? How do they relate to the application? Are they existing already? Where are they in relation to the new building? If somebody could explain that, that would be very helpful.
Thank you. Phil, would you like to answer that one?
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't just get my microphone on there. The containers aren't shown on any of the plans. So we would need to look whether those need permission in their own right. The school will benefit from some permitted development rights, and it could fall within those. But I think to give a sort of informed answer on that, we would need to see some more details of those containers.
Thank you. I think it was Councillor Bisnassing next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's not a question, but I would like to make a suggestion. I wonder if it is within the powers of our Assistant Director of Planning to increase the timescale as applied for 2 years to make it to 3 years, just to give a leeway for the completions for our own projects that's going on. Thank you.
The difficulty I believe we've got is that the description of development says 2 years, but I think theoretically with some tidying up of the application, we could probably give a consent for 3 years if that was what committee wanted to do. I'm looking for a little bit of support from my legal advisor here as well, just to confirm that's correct.
If what's been applied for is a 2-year temporary permission, and that's what the officer's considered and given his recommendation, I'd be cautious about going ahead and providing a longer consent without having that being considered throughout the sort of longer process. Particularly if the description of the application is clear that it's for 2 years. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Can I come in? If they need more time, then it's up for them to apply for more planning permission as and when required. So I can't see, and with confirmation from Will, that we can do anything such. The application is for 2 years. That is what we need to consider. If the school wants to come back in 18 months' time and apply for another 2 years, that's up to them. But we can only discuss and decide what is on the planning application before us. Thank you. Yeah.
Probably question to the officer. Do we have a current photograph of how far the building is completed so far? If you could put that on the screen.
That I don't think is relevant, is it?
It's not relevant because you have to assess the application on its merits. We shouldn't refuse something or approve it just because it's part built. I'm not sure if we have any photos, but I did go on the site visit with members on Monday, and it's the frame that's up. It doesn't have the walls or the ceilings on, but it's been built to frame level.
Thank you. Phil, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do agree with you on the fact that I think it would be, the application is for 2 years. I know that originally there was reference in the application to 5 years, or certainly another period other than 2 years, but I think that has now been clarified, and it's quite clear that the application is for 2 years, and that's what we must look at. And if it does go on, they'll need to come back if they require it to be any longer. I do also accept that the school wouldn't want to be paying for presumably the rental of this thing for any, I was going to call it a tent then, but for any longer than they is absolutely necessary. However, when I looked at the plans, I called this in, because I thought it was right in the circumstances, for it to come to committee. I have to say, particularly given the objections as well. But when I look at the separation distances that Phil Jordan, the planning officer, has told us about, they appear quite generous, and certainly within the local plan guidelines or policies, I should say. However, I think it is relevant. We did go on the site visit the other day and saw it from the leisure centre car park, and it doesn't look that bad, if I can say that. What's already been put up from that perspective. I don't know if colleagues did manage to get round and see it from Spalding Road, and that's why I think the benefit of, or the potential benefit of it being erected already, and we can see how big it's going to be because of the frame, tells us exactly that. And I do regret that we can't see a picture of what we're actually being asked to approve, that presumably the resident was going to show us the view from his back garden. I'm assuming that's what he was going to show us. Because when I looked at it, I was quite horrified at the size. It's much bigger than I expected it would be, even though I knew it was going to be 30 feet high, which is quite high, you know, at the bottom of your garden. So I do have, sympathy with the views of the residents, particularly those on Spalding Road and on Billfield Road. The problem is, of course, is that, you know, is there a material consideration to object to it? And I can't actually see one. But if anybody has got a picture of the current state of what we're being asked to adjudicate on, I think we should see it. As I say, it's, you know, we were told that the ridge height is 9 metres. That's about 30 feet. And it does, you know, it does appear from Spalding Road much more imposing, if I can put it that way. I appreciate it is a 2-year application, and I appreciate the position that the school finds itself in needing to get on and get this thing up and as soon as possible. And it's a sorry situation that we're in, but that's where we are. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
My question's been answered already, thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Morgan.
Thank you. I'm quite surprised at the lack of conditions around the application. We've clearly mentioned hours, operational hours, and I would suggest restrictions around use. I am concerned in particular, if I just home in on those two in particular, and potentially access as well. I couldn't approve this without some form of conditions around those. I think we're storing up trouble, because as much as I hugely respect what the school wants to do, I do think there are potential issues there. I think the new information regarding the separate storage places for the chairs and the tables, given the actual process required to do the examinations, raises another whole area about noise, potentially outside noise as well. If they're not actually within the same buildings, then those items have to be transferred from A to B. And that could be, I've worked in a church where we were handing out tables and chairs and things, and that can be an extremely noisy operation, actually. I think we really need more conditions in here. I just don't think I can approve this as much as I want to. I don't think I can approve this as it stands.
Can I just come back on the movement of chairs and tables? You could have that movement going from any of the buildings, from one building to the other, not just that particular site. So, you know, you could have that noise going on anyway.
The difference is the proximity to the residential area that we've pulled by putting this site where we are. We've moved everything that much closer to the residential area, and their amenity does then become a consideration. It's a material consideration. And also we are being told that the purpose of this building, it's not an incidental thing, facility. So therefore we can expect that therefore there will be noise around this.
Yes, but you also were told that the desks would be moved in once. They wouldn't be moved in continually every day, and that they would be taken back after, say, a 2-week period of exams. So that's not excessive noise, I don't feel. Would you like to come in, please, Emma?
Thank you. Before I forget, I do need to make a verbal recommendation, amendment to the recommendation, and that would be that condition 1 is deleted. That condition requires the commencement within 3 years. Because they've commenced, you don't need to put that condition on, but it actually conflicts with condition 3 as well in terms of the retention of the unit for 2 years. So I would be recommending that condition 1 is deleted. Councillor Morgan, you mentioned some conditions. One of them I'm not clear about, but I'll come to that in a second. In terms of hours of use, the school has clearly indicated some hours of use, so we could put that and reflect that in as a condition. In terms of the use of the structure, the school's also indicated that it's for school use only and not for commercial hire. So again, we could condition that. The third was about the access. I wasn't clear what you were perhaps suggesting with that condition, though.
I don't want to split hairs, but what's concerning me, I've just explained, my mother was in an almost identical situation where a building was put, a prefab temporary building was put at the end of her garden by a neighbouring school. And what happened was that basically the children in break time were going behind the building. They're now much closer to her boundary fence than they would have otherwise been playing in a much larger open space. And it was extremely, in reality, whatever the school might say, and I say this having worked in the environment for several years, in reality, it's very, very difficult actually to manage a significant number of children playing in a large area. A lot depends on the resources available at any given time. And unfortunately, where there's a will, there was a way. So my thought was, if there was some way, whether it's fencing or something, that in effect prevents the children going to that rear section on that boundary, creating in effect a barrier or buffer for the residents, and probably making it easier for the school to supervise as well, then I would recommend that, though I appreciate that's something for us to consider today, how important we think that is.
I think looking at the plans, there is actually a significant area of space the other side of the proposed structure, which would still be available for use as school playing fields. So I suspect you'd actually be, if you put a fence up, you'd actually be restricting any access to that area full stop. And I'm not at all sure what other facilities the school has in terms of play space for the children during break times. So I'm not sure that a fence of some sort would necessarily, where it would be sited and how you would restrict the access. In terms of the containers as well, we don't have the details in front of us in terms of what they are. From the description of the speaker gave, they sound like shipping containers, which might well mean that they are what we call chattels. That's not development, that doesn't require planning permission for them to be temporarily sited somewhere because they are movable structures. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens?
Yeah, I would support the Councillor Morgan's suggestion of conditions around time of use and restricting who uses it for what. I think that would allay the fears perhaps of some of the residents. And I would like to express my sympathy with the residents, because I can understand the concern that all of a sudden nothing was there, and then suddenly something quite big was built, within a hair's breadth of their residence. So I do understand the concern, and I sympathise with them. On the other hand, the school has approximately 1,500 students who all have to have their exams, and so there is an insurmountable problem here, but hopefully it is surmountable, and hopefully with those conditions that will go some way to allay the fears of the local residents. I don't know whether maybe the shipping containers could be put in the area that Councillor Morgan discusses, because that would then perhaps free up some space elsewhere for the children to be, and at the same time provide more of a buffer between the houses and the building, because obviously that could be a potential problem. I understand that. So maybe that will be a solution, because that you've got to weigh up the problem for the residents as to what happens in that buffer zone, if you like, and where the children go to play during playtime. So that's something we have to consider. And if, perhaps that will be a solution to it. I don't know without having seen the containers or knowing where they are now. But certainly I would support but I am, just before I stop speaking, I am encouraged by what Sport England have said, because they have quite clearly said that they don't raise an objection subject to the condition which requires the removal and appropriate renovation and remediation of the existing court area with 2 years of the installation of this site. And I understand that Sport England does have a very prominent voice in terms of planning applications. So I would be, if I were the residents, I would be to some extent relieved, by that. And so I would support this application on the basis of the conditions and of trying to find some sort of alleviation for that buffer zone on the basis of what Sport England have said. Thank you.
Thank you. You're quite correct about Sport England. We have to consult them on these sorts of applications, and if essentially what they're looking at is whether there's a loss of school playing fields and space. And should we receive objections, then there are various measures that the council would then have to take before we could issue planning permission, because there are all sorts of directions imposed on us. So the fact that they're supportive of the application is good. But clearly, they obviously don't want to see it as a permanent solution. We can absolutely have a conversation with the school about the location of the storage containers. I would suggest strongly that this is kept as a separate matter, and that's for 2 reasons. One, they're not proposed as part of this application. Secondly, I suspect they may not require planning consent, so it's around where is best to site them if they could be relocated. And the other thing that I do need to sort of point out, because I've been reflecting on it, is this is an existing school site, and those playing fields are currently used by children at break times. And in fact, on the site visit, there was one of those break times. And therefore, that potential noise and disturbance for residents is going to currently exist. I suppose it might force students into a pinch point. So I suppose there might be some increase in noise and disturbance, but I think you've got to balance that with the benefits to the school in terms of the school sports hall provision, and also take into account the fact that we're not starting as a site with no use. This is a school site where there will be noise and disturbance at break times already. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. First of all, the Sport England information, is that in the supplementary information? Okay, right, I've got you. Thank you. I wanted to say that in terms of the behaviour that Councillor Morgan has mentioned, I've personally reported behavioural incidents to the school on a number of occasions, and I've been very impressed with the behaviour management and the feedback that I've had and the sanctions that have been taken against the people that have caused the incidents. I'm choosing my words very carefully, but clearly the school are keen to get the children to behave. Oh, do we call them children these days? They might be students or pupils or whatever. I don't know enough about the noise. So from what Mr. Bundock said, I'm not clear whether or not bouncing a ball in the courtyard as it is at the moment, compared to bouncing a ball in the new sports hall, will be noisier due to an echo or softer due to insulation. I don't know if he and his neighbours will suffer more noise or less noise as a result. I'd be interested to know how that works. I do want to say again that it is a nonsense that we are considering a 2-year application. I don't think that's particularly a fault of the school, given that we, the council, have been talking to the school for years and certainly months about this proposition, and for the school not to realise that it's going to be more than 2 years likely before the refurbished sports hall is likely to be completed. if ever there was a case of the left hand not knowing what the right hand was doing in terms of council departments, this is it. And therefore I sympathise with the representations received, particularly 6.1 on page 44, 6.110, it bears reading aloud. The crux of the issue here is the sheer incompetence of SKDC to effectively manage and maintain the Deepings Leisure Centre over years, over decades. But it needs saying that we shouldn't be here, but clearly we are. And I apologise to Mr. Bundock and the residents around him for that this hasn't been put right in a different way and sooner. The issue with the containers is another thing that perhaps we could have sorted before it reached us here at the Planning Committee. So on the condition of hours, I agree with the comments made by Councillor Morgan and Councillor Stevens. Can I suggest that in terms of the late hours, the hours after 5 o'clock or 5:30, whichever, that we put a limit on the number of occasions. So that might be that on no more than 5 occasions per year, I don't know if that's too many or too few, on no more than 5 occasions per year will there be activity after 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. So I know that the school does have open days, and I went to one the other day at the school, but they don't have many. And also, do we need a condition around the commercial use, or do we do we trust the school on that? That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take those in reverse order. In terms of the condition of the commercial use, no, because the condition would be for school use only, so that would prevent the commercial, so we tied up in that particular one. In terms of limiting the number of occasions, yes, theoretically you could do so, but what is reasonable? Why 5? Why not 10? Why not 50? The school's not given any indication as to how many times they would need it beyond that. But quite clearly it would be for school use. I'm not sure if the space is lit. The outdoor courts didn't look like they were very well lit, but the school's obviously made a commitment that it would just be for school use and not for commercial. So
I think an indoor sports hall is likely to be lit.
it might have lighting, absolutely, but in terms of the existing sports pitches and the use that's been indicated, it would be after school clubs and certainly for school use only. But you would need to have a rationale and a reason and be reasonably justify a number of why restrict it to 5, for example, why that number and not more. The noise is the noise. In terms of the structure itself, the proposal, the walls would be 40mm composite panels, so it wouldn't just be a tent. It would be a little bit thicker, which obviously would have some noise minimising conditions. I've seen something similar. It is more of a tent structure than I think this is being proposed, and actually you can't hear that. It's been played for netball, and you can't hear outside of the tent. So I would hope that it would be reasonably well insulated in terms of the noise. But as you've indicated, the school is actually quite good at responding to complaints, so I'd hope that they would continue to work with their residents if there was any undue noise. In terms of the point about the incompetence of South Kesteven, that's obviously a debate for a different committee in a different time and place, and it's not relevant to the debate that we're having today. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
You've actually you touched on something I was going to ask about, and that was the level of insulation, thinking both from sound but also from heat, especially given our commitment to the climate as a council and protecting our climate. Do we have any clarity around I know you mentioned the composite wall panels, but can we specify their level of insulation?
So the annotation on the plan is that it would be an insulated PVC roof with 40mm composite wall panels. If members were particularly concerned, then yes, you could in theory have a noise attenuation scheme. Whether it's achievable, I'm not entirely sure. That would mean that they would have to go back to the manufacturers to look at the levels of sound insulation that are provided for by the existing proposed structure, and if necessary they would have to have a redesign so that they could have additional noise insulation or heat insulation. I'm sure, however, the school doesn't want to be burning money by heating something where it's just going to be escaping pretty quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Judy Stevens.
Yes, obviously the Assistant Director of Planning is quite right. The representation at number 10 is I should mention is also LCC were responsible for the maintenance of the Deeping Leisure Centre in some way. But as you said, this is an argument for another day, as if we haven't talked about it enough already. But anyway, moving on from that, it is possible perhaps as well on the positive side that when the redevelopment of this site does take place, that there would be an opportunity for phased reopening of the leisure centre, which might include access to the sports hall, which I believe is sort of, you know, at one end, if you like, of the site. So it could well be that the school would enjoy access to that before the whole of the site has been. I'm speaking as, you know, I'm just looking as an observer. I'm not speaking with any knowledge of this particularly, but it does occur to me that that might well be the case, in which case that would then happen within the 2 years. So, you know, that might be a possibility. I think that's causing some amusement to my colleague, but, you know, it's worth saying. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm aware that we've been going for some time now. I just want to know if you're bringing something new that hasn't already been mentioned. If it has already been mentioned, then we will leave it, because then I will ask for a proposer.
I wanted to come back about the number of occasions issue. The Assistant Director of Planning suggested that we would need a reason for that. It's a school, and different things happen at schools from week to week, from Department for Education person, from minister to minister, and also it is a school that we've heard is community focused. So, for sake of argument, I don't know I'm not privy to any information about the Deepings music scene, but for sake of argument, if the school, for whatever reason, wanted to have brass band practice every Tuesday night, then this would prevent that from happening. I mean, it's an extreme example, but the school have said that they require only for open days, and there will be a very limited number of open days that take place. I don't know if it's 5 or 10, perhaps. Mrs. Goodchild could indicate with a number of fingers the likely number of open days that they're expecting, but I can't think of any other good reason why they would be open in the evening, and therefore to prevent kind of unforeseen noisy circumstances, I think it's reasonable to put that condition in.
It wasn't necessarily about the reasonableness of a condition per se. It was about the reasonableness of the restriction to 5, 10, whatever the case may be. I genuinely do not know how many opening evenings the school would likely to be needing, but you know, and that's not a conversation or an issue that's been raised previously, so we've not been able to have that conversation.
Thank you.
My concern is you're plucking these numbers out of thin air, and that in itself is unreasonable.
Because you're not being reasonable. Councillor Bellamy?
I think we've been talking about this for, well, good 3/4 of an hour to an hour. We haven't come up with anything yet that says that we're going to refuse it, so I'm happy to propose it. So the only other thing I would say is I think it does sound like any activities that do go on later are not going to be necessarily noisy activities anyway.
Thank you for that. You also am going to include conditions of hours of use and for school use only. Are you happy with those conditions to be in there?
Yes, yeah. If obviously if we come up with something reasonable.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baxter. Sorry, Councillor Dilks.
Sorry. He's the good looking one. I'm reassured on the insulation. I thought it would be much more tent-like, if I can put it that way. And so the panels, I think you said 40 mils, which in real money is getting on towards 2 inches, which is, you know, some encouragement, I've got to say. And the fact that the roof will have presumably slightly narrower insulation. But I'm not for these numbers of restrictions in the evening. I understand that. I think that's, you know, not very, it's not easy to regulate anyway. But I didn't get the impression from Mrs. Goodchild that the school wanted, you know, to use it in the evenings anyway. And I think we should focus, and I think we should have what was proposed very early on, and that was, you know, a condition on the hours, a simple condition on the hours. Now, whether it's 8 in 8, there's nothing in the actual report that talks about the hours. I did hear what Mrs. Goodchild said, but I just wonder if, you know, for example, no activity before 8 a.m. And no activity after perhaps 6 p.m. would be helpful as a condition.
So the hours on the application form are 6:30 a.m, which is obviously to allow the setup time, and till 9 p.m, Monday to Friday only. That's what's been asked for in the application.
Yeah, I've got to say that does seem rather wide, if I can put it that way, and I think it would be of some reassurance if we could perhaps in negotiation with the school, you know, get that to a more reasonable figure.
So unless you want to adjourn, so I can have a conversation with the bursar, it's not something I can give you an answer on at the moment. That's what's been proposed. The alternative is members, if you've got good reason to, could propose a different set of hours in terms of the amenity issue for residents.
Councillor Bishness-Singh.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, I think we have spent considerable amount of time on talking about noise. This is normal during daytime activity. I wonder if the legal officer can confirm, if I'm right, that the actual when do noise become a nuisance? I think it starts from after 11:30 at night to 6 o'clock in the morning. Is that right? And also it must be above 72 dBA.
Shall I jump in on this one, perhaps? So there's a couple of things here. So I think one of the things you're possibly referring to is sort of hours of, like say on construction sites, for example, we might put hours of operation. So we might say no construction work prior to 7:30, and then have a cut off in the evening. That's just about controlling the hours of construction work in the day. The other thing is a statutory nuisance, and that's covered under separate legislation. So irrespective of the planning situation, if there turned out to be a statutory nuisance, then our environmental health colleagues can deal with it. And there the residents would have to demonstrate that it's met the relevant tests in terms of statutory nuisance. So it's not necessarily about a single noise level, because there are different tones can be a nuisance in different ways. So you can have intermittent tones, you can have high pitched tones, you can have just flat tones. And from my understanding, and please excuse me, I'm not an expert in noise, different noise levels and different tones or different types of noise can affect you in a different way. So you might not, it's not as simple as saying 72 decibels. I don't know if the solicitor wanted to add anything else to that or not.
No, other than I don't think it's as simple as a certain time in the day in the evening when something constitutes a nuisance. And I think Emma's right in that it's a matter of environmental health, normally separate to planning, whether there's a nuisance or not. But I think I agree with Emma in terms of putting a condition for hours of use. It's to do with what's reasonable and justified in planning terms.
Background noise. This is transient noise that is held during the day. Whether you are going to school, there's a certain amount of transient noise that stays there because children need to play, need to shout, need to do whatever it is. This is a normal part of the growing and their well-being as well. We can't shut them out, you know, or this is part of growing. So we have to accept that, but this is during a normal time. And the school only lasts till about 5 o'clock at latest.
Thank you. Right. I'm going to end the debate now because we're going around in circles, I feel. We've had a proposer. Do we have a seconder? Well, I think Gloria had her hand up before.
Just want to say one thing.
Go on.
When are children going to be in the school at 6:30 in the morning? They're not. It's only going to be setting up for the exams. So that clears that up. And I'm willing to second the proposal, because I think the school needs the sports hall and they've got to have something.
Thank you. So it's been proposed and seconded, and all those in favour?
Had an additional point. I've had my hand up for about 15 minutes, and that was to do the lighting, because I noticed we're talking about 20 spotlights, and in fact, our planning officer raised lighting. If we need to be clear exactly how that could impact on the amenity of the neighbours. We're talking about lights inside, which case it won't. Or are we talking about spotlights around the building, in which case it very much could, depending on. Can we have clarity around that, please? Because I do think lighting could prove an issue otherwise.
In terms of external lighting, no external lighting is currently proposed. I don't know if Phil can provide any further sort of guidance. You could put a condition on to say no external lighting without prior agreement with the local authority. Obviously, external lighting is not in itself unacceptable. It might depend on the hours. It might depend on how they fit it in terms of cowls, so it's directional lighting. There's all sorts of things you can do, so lighting is not a nuisance, but as it stands, there isn't, from what I understand, any, and it's next to the car park where obviously there's existing lighting, I would imagine, in the existing car park. Phil, I don't know if you're aware of any lighting that's currently there or proposed.
No, I mean, I think what you've said is correct. The lighting proposed is internal to the building. There's no external lighting proposed. If members wanted to go belt and braces, they could just have an additional condition that said there shall be no external lighting, subject to approval by the local planning authority, and that would then, ensure that if any lighting was proposed, it then would have to come to us to be looked at. Clearly, any existing lighting that's there at the moment doesn't need planning permission.
That proposal, please, that we just add that generic condition, because at the moment they haven't got anything outside, and in the winter especially, I can imagine they may need lighting for safety, access, etc. So I think it could well come up further down the line, and if we've got that umbrella condition that's perfectly reasonable in there, then it just provides a safety net.
If Emma would like to come in.
Thank you. So at the moment, you've got a proposal and a second that's been seconded on the table. That proposal is, as I understand it, to approve subject to conditions. Condition 1 would be deleted. It would be condition 2 and 3 is listed. It would also be an hours of use condition, 6:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday to Friday, and school use only. That motion needs to either be amended and accepted, or it needs to be voted on.
Councillor Bellamy, are you happy for that amendment?
Could we have the amendment again, please?
Yeah. you want to put your mic on?
However we want to phrase it, that there's the general condition that should external lighting be required, it would be subject to the planning authority, however, whatever your standard term would be. Yeah.
No lighting without prior consent. They'd have to submit the scheme. We have got some standard wording.
Yeah, I'm quite happy for that.
And I'm happy to second that. Councillor Dilks, are you going to bring anything new to the table, or we're going straight to the vote?
Well, I hope you listen to what I've got to say. Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I hope it is new. It was to try to seek a consensus. We've spoke, and there is clearly some concern about the hours. I personally think 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. is too wide. And I would like to ask Councillor Bellamy if he would accept in his proposal that we condition the hours to restrict the hours to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Again, you would have to propose that motion. It would have to be accepted by Councillor Bellamy and then seconded. What I would say is 7 a.m. might be okay, but again, I haven't spoken to the school. You'd have to have good reason for that earlier restriction. However, we've already heard that they might need the use of the school for open evenings, and that would be up to about 9 p.m. So by imposing a 7 p.m. cut-off, you would be preventing the school from using that space for open evenings.
Can I just add, Emma, I think the important thing on the conditions that restrict the use is that both those conditions would apply and they would need to be read together. So whilst in isolation, I would certainly agree that 6:30 to 9 p.m. is quite a generous amount of hours for that facility, but when read alongside the condition that would restrict the use only to the school's use, that the two conditions together do provide a reasonable amount of control. I think that the type of activities that might occur either very early in the morning or late into the evening that could cause a nuisance would be likely to be non-school related activities. So I think members just need to be aware that both those conditions would be applied and would be read together.
Can I refer back, sorry, through the chair, to Emma's offer previously to speak to the applicant to see if there could be an arrangement made for the hours, because it seems that the hours in the application slightly differ from what the applicant was suggesting might be the use. And so perhaps, you know, with a 10-minute discussion, it could be that we could just change those hours of use slightly, which would be, I think, a comfort to the residents and also allay the fears of some of the committee members. And for the sake of a 10-minute adjournment, I think that would be a good thing to do. So
I'll be happy to adjourn the meeting till 12:10, because we are limited on the time today because the chamber will be in use after 1 o'clock, so we cannot extend the meeting. And then we will come back and we will have a vote. We will not be going around in circles anymore. So we are having a break now. Thank you.